If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today I'm happy to sew along with you the Lemonza wallet. I hope that's the right way of saying it, by Country Cow Designs. Let me show you some of the amazing features of this bag, and then we will talk about very important subject, fabric choices for this, because I learned the hard way. We will get into that. So this is a clutch size wallet. You could put a crossbody strap on it or a wristlet if you wanted as a crossbody. I have it set kind of short right now, but this sits nice and close to your body. It has a magnetic clap or snap closure here. My iPhone 15 Max fits in this pocket perfectly. On the inside, you got two generous slip pockets, as well as 12 card slots and a zipper pocket. It's got a really, really unique construction. I learned some things doing this, which is so much fun to do. Now, in the pattern, Jo talks about what she recommends for fabric choices for this. I 100% recommend to follow that. I did not. I kind of got a little bit, I do have an industrial machine. And when I did this one in vinyls and 600 denier waterproof canvases, it challenged my 1541. Like my second time ever, the safety clutch engaging, which is scary because your whole machine seizes up. So where that happened mostly, so I use this vinyl, which I just love. It's a Mormino vinyl, but it's a little bit of a thicker vinyl. And I use 600 denier waterproof canvas for my linings. So where I ended up having problems was sewing right along where these wings are, because we've got pretty much in the seams 2 layers of the vinyl, 2 layers of the lining canvas, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of the waterproof canvas I did in my wings here. And so I didn't think it was going to top stitch. It did. It did, thankfully. But now I know. I would suggest if you were going to use a vinyl, to use a thinner vinyl, and I wouldn't use waterproof canvas of the lining for that at that point in time. I would probably choose to use a cotton. Definitely use cottons for these wings. Now, these wings, I'll show you what happened. These wings are supposed to come all the way together at the bottom. Mine don't. And that is because my wings were too thick. I couldn't get them together. I couldn't get my machine under it, but they're even on each side. So I'm okay with that. There's no raw edges. We are fine. But definitely for these wings, I would use cotton. Very important to keep the interfacings outside of the seam allowances, unless of course you're on an industrial. If you're using cotton, you do have to use at least a medium woven interfacing all the way to the ends, or else your machine will eat up your fabric. But for your main stabilizers, 100% keep them outside of the seam allowances. Stabilizers I used in this bag. So in my flap, I used Decovil Heavy. In my overlays, I have Decovil Heavy. Again, it's all outside of the seam allowances. What is awesome is that Jo provides pattern pieces for everything, including the interfacings. She calls for a non-woven light interfacing. I don't know an equivalent for that in Canada, so I just used SF101. For my card slots, she calls for the same thing. I actually used EBFuse medium just because I really like that in my card slots. Again, it's outside of the seam allowances. You definitely want to be keeping it away from where these wings are. EBFuse medium is very similar to a Pellon 809, which is a non-woven, but the medium woven, or the medium EBFuse is a woven interfacing. But I used that in my card slots, but my card slots I did in cotton. They were the only thing I did in cotton. Yeah, for my main panels, it calls for Decovil Heavy or Peltex for your main panels, and I would choose that depending what you are choosing on using. Say you are going to use a thinner vinyl like a Mora or something like that, I would go ahead and I would use like a Decovil Light or an EBFuse Heavy in those places. So if it's a little bit thicker, I would go for Decovil Light. If it's cotton, just definitely go for a Decovil Heavy. This one I used, for my main ones, I used EBFuse Heavy, which is similar to a Decovil Light that you can get from Emmaline bags. But it is a woven interfacing, so it just fuses so much better. All my hardware is from Emmaline bags. Again, my vinyl, the dice vinyl is from Marmino. The black vinyl here is the Loon Black from Galaxy Kustoms. All my interfacing I got from Emmaline bags. Yeah. I think that is all to say about that. Again, when I did it in these thicker fabrics, it was fine until the final top stitch right in here. Like, those are thick seams, and my machine was a little bit mad at me. Oh well, you live, you learn. Anyways, what else? This is also one class that we have done in January 2024 on Tuesdays. So if you need a slowed down version of this, you can definitely join the membership side. That first class was January 9th, 2024. But of course, the classes all go into replay. They do release to the public side after 18 months exclusivity, is that the right word? To the membership side. Yeah, I think that's all. I really, truly loved making this bag. It was not, I cut and finished it and did this tutorial and the editing of the tutorial within 8 hours. And that is pretty darn good. So I would say if I was just sewing this, it would take me about 4 hours to make, maybe less. Yeah. Anyways, how about we get to making this bag?
So you're going to need some rivets, some zipper tape, a zipper pull, 2 3/4-inch D-rings, your nameplate, and a magnetic snap. I've already gone ahead and turned my webbing into a crossbody strap. You can do a crossbody strap or a wrist slit for this one. You're going to need your zipper pocket facing and your lining fabric, 2 exterior overlay pieces with the Decovil Heavy outside of the seam allowances, your flat pieces on the exterior, Decovil Heavy outside of the seam allowance, as well as your lining piece, your 2 main exterior pieces. Now I've only gone and put my interfacing on the back side of this. Make sure your interfacing is fused 5/8 of an inch from the bottom edge, and we'll do the front piece later on in the construction of this bag. 2 card slot pieces with the interfacing outside of the side seam allowances, your 2 main lining pieces. Now you're going to need wings in lining and exterior, 2 sets for each, mirrored to one another, so 8 pieces in all. You're going to need your side lining pieces, 4 of them, your 2 zipper pocket lining pieces, and your front pocket piece, exterior and lining piece. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and work on the flap. I'm going to find the top and bottom centers of both of our lining and exterior pieces. Now I'm going to be using a magnetic snap for mine. So Joe recommends in the pattern to measure up on the lining piece, nice and centered, approximately 1 inch up. Like so. So you'll be doing the marking on the wrong side of your lining piece, and go ahead and install your male side of your magnetic snap at that point, making sure to back it with a small scrap of Decovil Heavy for extra security. So that's done. I like to put a little piece of Gorilla Tape over top of the prongs. Now take these 2 pieces, put them right sides together, match up your top center and your bottom center, and then go ahead and clip these together all the way around. Next, what we're going to do is go in with the seam allowance, and we are going to stitch these together, leaving the top straight edge open for turning, so all the way down and around here. Once that is done, go in with your pinking shears and trim that seam allowance down. And then you can go ahead and you can turn this right side out through that top opening, making sure you are pressing out all of those seams nice and crisp. Once you have those seams all rolled nice and flat, go ahead and apply some clips just to hold those seams in place to prepare for top stitching. And then what we're going to do is we're going to baste shut that top edge and then top stitch around the rest of this flap with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that is our flap complete. Set that aside for now. Now we are going to work on our accent pieces here. So what we want to do, you can use clips here as well. I'm going to go in with some double-sided tape and put it down the center of these. And this is where it's important that our stabilizer is cut very accurately, as we are going to use that as our guide to folding these over. So each of those long edges, we're going to fold over that stabilizer piece nice and tight against it and stick it down. You'll do the same for the opposite one. And then we're going to go ahead and top stitch these with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance along each of the long edges. Now that that's done, set one of those aside for later. We're going to take the opposite side one and we are going to do markings as per the pattern measurements. There's 2 markings from each side of this overlay piece on the wrong side. Mark them with an erasable pen. Okay, so now we're going to take our back piece. So this is the one we have with the stabilizer. The stabilizer should be 5/8 of an inch away from the bottom of this piece. That's very, very important. Mark your top and bottom centers, and then you're going to measure down as per the pattern measurements and draw a line, and then a second line as per the measurements in the pattern down from the top to curvy edges. Double check your measurements. That's what I'm doing here. And you also want to mark a center line through this so we know whereabouts we will be putting the flap on nice and centered. Again, I'm just using my Tandy leather pen on my vinyl here, making sure it's nice and centered, very important, and mark that center line. Now on the back side of our flap, on the lining side, I'm going to put some double-sided tape just along that bottom flat edge there. Now we are putting these both right sides up, so our exterior is right side up and our flap is right side up. And along that first line we drew, we're going to match up that center on the flap with the center line that we drew along that first top line. Next, we're going to take our overlay piece. I'm going to put some double-sided tape along the back of this overlay piece. And we are going to line this overlay piece up with the next line that we drew down nice and centered. So make sure it's centered. Helps to find the center of this overlay piece so you know it is nice and centered, and match it up with that center line and stick it in place. Then we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch from the inner side lines that we drew along the long sides like this, all the way around that in a nice rectangle with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to secure that flap in place. Once that is done, this is what that looks like. Now what we want to do is we want to take our D-rings. So you're going to pull the tape away that we had sticking these down and put the D-ring as close as you can to that top stitching we just did, and then stick the overlay back down. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to sew from the raw edges into that first line that we drew across. Now you may want to use a small scrap of vinyl, especially if you're using a walking foot, to protect your hardware and your vinyl from your walking foot, which you'll see me do right here, and do the same with the opposite side. That's all done. I've gone ahead and I've put some rivets in, making sure those rivets are far enough outside of the outside seam allowances. Again, double check that your seam allowance from the bottom of the stabilizer is 5/8 of an inch. And just like we did with the overlay, we are going to be folding up that bottom edge nice and tight against that stabilizer. And you can double check to make sure it's 5/8 of an inch, very important. And that is our back piece. And we're going to go ahead and top stitch that seam in place. This doesn't have to be super neat as it will be covered up later by the overlay. So now we're going to take our exterior pocket piece. Now Joe has provided instructions to how to measure where you will be putting the female part of your magnetic snap based on your magnetic snap. So definitely follow that in the pattern and make your marks, and then install the female side of your magnetic snap backed with a small scrap of Decovil Heavy for security and a piece of Gorilla Tape like I'm doing so. I've also gone ahead and I've put my nameplate on the back side of my exterior back piece. Now what we're going to do is take our lining pocket pieces, put them right sides together like so. Make sure your top is your top because this is a slight trapezoid piece and you want to make sure it is going the right way. Go ahead and clip the top sides of the lining and the exterior pocket pieces together and sew across here with the seam allowance. Then we're going to put these wrong sides together and top stitch it in place. That is that pocket piece done. You want to make sure you can still move them free of each other. Now we're going to take our front piece and we're going to match up the bottom centers of our pocket and our front panel pieces. You're also going to want the very top to clip them in place. Because the pocket is a trapezoid, you're going to notice it's a little bit bigger, and that is what we want because we want it to kind of have a little bit of a sloop to be able to put things in there. So you kind of match up the sides and it should leave a little bit of a gap there, which you see here. Make sure it's nice and even from the top. Adjust if needed. Now, once you have that placed where you want it to be, what we want to do is you want to fold up just the exterior pocket piece. So we only want our lining and our exterior main panel right sides together along the back. Clip that exterior of the pocket piece out of the way. Then we're going to draw a 1-inch line like so. And that is going to be our guide for sewing the lining pocket piece and the exterior main panel together. So go ahead and sew along that line with that 1-inch seam allowance, making sure that exterior pocket piece is up and out of the way. Once that is done, go ahead and trim that seam allowance up to approximately 1/4 inch. And then go ahead and fold down that pocket piece. And you can go ahead and clip down the rest of the sides like so. Now we're going to go ahead and baste these sides. Very important, you baste from the top to the bottom for both to avoid stretching. So there we go, that is all done. Now what we want to do is measure up 5/8 of an inch from, or sorry, 3/8 of an inch from the top. It should also be 5/8 of an inch from the bottom, just like we did with the back main stabilizer piece. And what we're going to do is use these lines as our guide for securing our stabilizer in place like so. Once again, making sure it's 5/8 of an inch from the bottom. Go ahead and fuse that in place. Once that is fused, we're going to do exactly like we did with the back panel, and we are going to fold that bottom edge up and over the stabilizer, using the stabilizer as our nice and firm edge to fold it up. And again, double check that it is 5/8 of an inch seam allowance that is folded up, which mine is. Adjust if you need to. And go ahead and top stitch along that top part, or that bottom side, just like we did with this one. Okay, so you can kind of put the snap in, you can kind of see how those pieces go together. You can set those aside for now. Okay, so now we're going to take our lining piece, one of them, and we are going to prepare for our zipper pocket. So I do have a class down below on how to do this zipper pocket placement. We're going to draw a line on the right side of our lining piece, 5/8 of an inch from the top. I know it looks like I did an inch there. I made a mistake. I went back and corrected later. Make sure you know where that center is. So again, that is marked on the right side of our lining piece. Now you're going to take your zipper facing, and on the wrong side, you're going to make the marks that are on the pattern piece. Now I'm just marking the little side pieces here, and I'm going to go in with my ruler and do the rest of the markings, just like you do with any zipper pocket when you're doing a facing. So I'm drawing my rectangle, and then measuring in from my sides, the same as the pattern piece, and doing my little lines, and then the center line, and then our V's. Once you've marked the centers, line up the centers and line this overlay up at that 5/8 of an inch line that we had previously drawn. These are right sides together. Use some pins inside that rectangle, and then we're going to sew around that rectangle, which I've done here. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut down that center line to the V's, and then cut the V's into the corners as close as I can to the stitching without cutting the stitching. Then you're going to go ahead and pop this through that hole, bringing these wrong sides together like so, and give that a really good press to hold it in place. Once that's all done, we're going to work on our lining a zipper pocket piece. So what you're going to do is I'm going to use some double-sided tape. You could definitely use some clips. I'm going to take my pattern piece H, my lining zipper pocket piece. Both of these are right side up, and I'm going to use double-sided tape along the top edges. Again, use clips if your machine is sensitive to the tape. So again, the lining piece is right side up. And then along one of those, we are going to stick our zipper tape also right side up. Then we're going to go ahead and stitch that in place. So all of these pieces are right side up. I'm going to sew across here, and then I will do the same with the opposite side and the opposite side of our zipper tape, like so. That was done correctly. You should see the zipper tape right side up, and now you see the back side of those lining panels, so we know it's good. You're going to take some double-sided tape along the back side of our main lining piece, along that rectangle, that long edges. This is going to help us hold that zipper in place. Make sure your zipper pull is going to the left. Take off the paper backing of the double-sided tape and go ahead and lay it along the top of that zipper, making sure you are nice and even away from the teeth. Once you're happy with that placement, do the same with the bottom side. Once we have this place where you want it to be, we're going to go ahead and top stitch around the rectangle with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, making sure our lining pieces are butterflied out and away from each other. And then while at the machine, we're also going to go ahead and close up this zipper pocket by sewing all the way around. So once you are done that top stitching, what we're going to do is flip this so the wrong side is facing us and we can see the lining pockets. We're going to bring them down towards each other, right sides together, like so. Trim up the longer of the lining zipper pocket, not the lining panel, but the lining zipper pocket pieces. And then go ahead and stitch around the 3 open sides to close up that pocket. And now you should have a fully functioning zipper pocket. Go ahead and trim up the zipper lining pieces to about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance or so. Okay, so now we're going to work on our wings here. So lay them out so you can see which set goes with what, mirrored to one another. So there's my exterior pieces. And you're going to take the lining pieces and put them right sides together with each of the exterior pieces. Now you do not have to clip the long straight edge because we're going to leave that part open for turning, and we're going to go ahead and sew around the other 3 sides with the seam allowance for all 4 of the wings. That's done, go ahead and kind of clip the corners on an angle as close to the stitching as you can so we can get nice sharp corners, and trim your seam allowances up, and then turn these right sides out, making through that opening along that long side, making sure to pop out those corners nice and neat. You may need a little poker tool like this to get those corners nice and sharp. And then we are going to top stitch most of this. Now the long slanted side, you are not going to top stitch. We are going to baste that open side shut, as well as top stitch the two short sides, leaving the long angled side untop stitched. So we're going to go ahead, top stitch across here, and here, leaving that angled seam untop stitched. So that's what that looks like. See, the angled seam has no top stitching, which is what we want. Now we're going to work on these pockets, so the card slots. So go ahead and mark the lines as per the pattern piece, making sure you've marked your top and bottoms. I've already pressed mine, but I'm going to show you how this works. Starting at the bottom, press in to that first line, wrong sides together. The next line, wrong sides together. And then the next line after that, you're going to bring it right sides together and then press along there. Then wrong sides together at the next line. Press right sides together at the next line. Press, and so on and so forth for both of these until you get to the very top side, and then you will bring that wrong sides together, bringing those top edges in at that 1/2 inch seam allowance. So go ahead and do all of that. And then once it's all done, this is what it looks like from the front. Make sure they're about the same size for both of them. And this is what it looks like from the back side. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead with a card and make sure that the depth is good, and they are. Now we want to mark into the center point of both of these up to that second fold line. And I'm just going to use my chalk here, just like so. Same with the opposite one. And then we're going to top stitch those along that line. I like to go up and then pivot and come back down just so I have extra stability. Make sure you flip the top part out of the way because that will be our slip pocket. So just like this, up that line and back down, making sure the top is flipped up and out so it doesn't get caught in the stitching. Do our lining panels. So I've gone ahead and I've marked 1 inch from the bottom as per the pattern measurements. I'm going to work on the panel with our zipper pocket first. So what you want to do is match that center up at that 1 inch line with the center that we have marked on our card slots, like so. And just put a few clips just at the top to hold those card slots in place. This is a little bit different than how we've done most card slots, so it's really, really fun to do. Now what we want to do is we want to lift up the front of the card slots up and out of the way like so, and just clip the back side like this. So we're forming that card slot or the slip pocket piece, and we're going to go ahead and we are going to just top stitch right along that fold, making sure our zipper pocket is out of the way, and stitch across there for both lining pieces. So this is what that looks like done. That creates those slip pockets. Now go ahead and you can clip down the rest of the sides of the card slots like so. And now we're going to baste the short sides and go ahead and top stitch along the bottom side of our card slots, and that'll finish the card slot and the slip pocket pieces. So that's done. Our zipper pocket works good. We have our slip pocket as well as our 6 card slots on each. Now we're going to take our side pieces and we are going to put them on each side of these lining pieces, right sides together like so. Then you're going to go ahead and you are going to sew down these with the seam allowance in the pattern. And then once you're done sewing those, you're going to flip these the right way, give it a good press, and then top stitch through those side pieces. So those are our lining panels complete. I'm going to once again check that my cards fit. It's a nice and tight fit. It's perfect. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to take our exterior piece, a pattern piece, and we want to fold up at that dotted line. Make sure you know where your center is because you're going to want to line up that center. You're going to put these against the lining pieces, lining up that bottom nice and centered. Then you're going to trim your pattern piece or your lining pieces along this pattern piece so we get that nice curve. That's what this looks like done for both. You'll have to mark your top center again because you've most likely cut that away. And now we're going to put on our wings. So you want to measure up on each of the sides of these lining pieces 1 inch and make a mark with your erasable pen. And this is going to be the guide for the placement of our wings. Now you're going to take these wings with the exterior right side up, so our lining sides are going to be right sides together. Make sure the top of the wings, the longer part is going towards the top of our side panels and the shorter part is going towards the bottom of these lining panels, and clip them in place at that 1 inch line. Then you can go ahead and you can baste these in place. So that's what that looks like. Now you're going to take these lining panels, put them right sides together, clip together that bottom of each of those. And then we're going to sew across here with the seam allowance. Okay, so that's done. Now you want to open these up and you want to press that seam we just sewn open. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch along each side of that seam to keep that seam in place. So that is done. That is our lining section done. Now we're going to take our overlay piece, and you're going to have to trim the second overlay piece to match the width of our exterior pieces, which I just did. Find the centers of the short sides of the overlay piece. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the overlay piece on our lining piece wrong side up. So our overlay is wrong side up. Match up the center of the overlay short side with the seam that we had just sewn our 2 lining pieces together. And just along these short sides of the overlay, we are going to baste those in place. This is such a cool technique. It's the first time doing this. So baste that in place. So there we go. So you can see it kind of looks like a handle here, but trust me, this is an amazing process. Now we're going to take our exterior back piece. Make sure you flip the flap out of the way, and I'm putting this with the zipper pocket side piece of the lining piece. Go ahead and match up those raw edges and clip them in place. Now the folded bottom side of our exterior piece should be nice and centered with that overlay that we just put onto the lining piece. So once we finish clipping this one in place, we will go ahead and clip the other lining side in place, and you will see those folded edges should be nice and butt up to one another. And that is going to be our turning hole. This is just such an amazing way of doing this. I really enjoyed this part. So go ahead and clip all of those in place. Once those are in place, you're going to put your right zipper foot onto your machine, and you're going to stitch all the way around this with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now changing into that right zipper foot just helps avoid that bulk and having your foot kind of up on some bulky parts or whatever. The right zipper foot just helps get nice and close to that. Be very aware of where your flap is to make sure you are not sewing through that flap. Once that's done, go ahead and clip those corners with your pinking shears to help get a nice curvy corner when we go to turn this out. And then you can go ahead and turn this out through the opening that we have left there. Now, I struggled with this a little bit because I did use really thick vinyl, so don't use vinyl. Don't use thick vinyl on the outside of this one, trust me. Now, this overlay piece that we have along the lining side, you are also going to want to flip that up and around so it is the wrong side of that overlay is with the right side of the exterior. So kind of flip it up and around, like so. And press out all of those seams really, really good. Now that we have those seams pressed out really good, now we want to secure this overlay in place. So we want to put it nice and centered over top of that gap in the exterior where we had those folded in edges. So I'm going to use some double-sided tape just to kind of hold those in place. And then I'm going to stick that overlay nice and centered over top of that, and that's going to close up that turning hole. So stick it down in place, and then along the long sides of that overlay, we are going to stitch those with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and that's going to close up our turning hole. That's what that looks like done. So we sewed through all the layers. Now go ahead and roll the seams of the whole exterior between your fingers. You're going to fold your wings in towards the lining. That is where it gets really thick, and that's where I learned that I should have chosen different materials for making this, because even that thickness using a thicker vinyl and waterproof canvas challenged my industrial machine. So yeah, I'm wishing that I had used cotton for these wing pieces for sure. Anyways, hold all of these seams in place like so, all the way around, rolling them between your fingers, making sure they're nice and tight. You'll want to make sure your flap is out of the way. We don't want to be sewing through the flap. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to top stitch all the way around this with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so it all looks good. And now all we have left to do is to do our wings. So what we want to do is bring this right sides together. You're going to line up that angled side of the wings. clip them in place. Now this, because I used a thicker waterproof canvas, I couldn't get all the way to the bottom. I just did as far as I could. Again, if I'd used cotton pieces like the pattern suggested, this would have worked out much better for me. Anyways, go ahead and stitch down those sides, then turn it right side out. It still turned out great. It looks wonderful. It's complete. Admire your work. Pat yourself on the back. This is where I'm going to add my crossbody strap. This is where you'd also add your wristlet. Check it all out. Pat yourself on the back. Great job. And we're done.
And that's it. That's all. See, not too much about that. Did you guys all catch where my machine got caught? Did you see my little bit of panic on that final top stitch? Again, this is 100% domestic machine friendly. I struggled because I chose the wrong fabrics. All patterns are domestic machine friendly. You just got to make sure you choose the right fabrics for your machine. I have an industrial and I did not choose the right fabrics for my machine, and it made it struggle, which put me in my place a little bit, but that is good. Anyways, if at any time you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you'd like to support my channel further, you can always buy me a coffee. That's linked down below in the comments. There's also the super thanks here, so you could give me a tip there if you wanted to as well. All of that goes right back into the channel and right back into buying equipment to make these videos better. And yeah, check out the membership side of the channel in case there's something there that interests you. Anyways, until the next one, I'll catch you guys again. Bye.